Has your life been impacted in some way due to negative thinking? Today, we're going to be sharing with you how to overcome negative thinking and start to creating better positions in your life. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Awaken Your Spirit. We are your hosts. I'm Aaron Garcia.
And I'm Veronica Mendez Garcia. And our show's about inspiration, motivation, and developing the mindset to live a happy and abundant life.
We are live here every Mondays and Wednesdays at 9 a.m. Pacific time. If you guys would like to join us, you can subscribe to the show at the bit.ly/AV subscribe here in the lower third here, and you guys will get reminded each time when we go live. So we're going to get into some really great topics and things we've been discussing over the last few days here. And I think it's going to be very beneficial for all of us and to learn how do we create things in our life. And we have to understand that part of that starts with how we think and what we say. And we've got some really great information we're going to share with you guys today. But before we get into that, we're going to always start with our first segment of the show, which is our inspirational moment with Veronica.
So inspirational moments is when I like to read something inspirational. And today I have a quote from Abraham Hicks. And Abraham is just channeled information that's channeled through Esther Hicks, for those of you who aren't aware of Abraham. And this is, it's from a talk that they gave in San Francisco, February of 2004. It says, "See this world as a free world and see everyone in it as trying through their individual experiences to find their way back to that calling, back to that source energy. And even though there are billions of them going about it in a way that is different than you would choose, there is no right or wrong way. In other words, bless them all and get on with the only thing you have any power about, which is opening or closing your vortex to your natural state of well-being."
That's some nice food for thought. If you guys really enjoy that, make sure you guys give us some hearts and give us some likes into the comments here. I always like listening to Abraham because there's always such great wisdom. You know, we listen to a lot of that on either YouTube. We've gone to a live event a couple of years ago, and it's interesting when somebody asks a question and they answer the question. It's not just helping that person that's asking the question. It's a lot of the people have the same question, and everybody gets benefit because of the answers that share with Abraham. A lot of great quotes. You guys can sign up for those. Daily reminders online, YouTube, a lot of the different topics that she and Abraham talk about. Very fascinating.
But it really comes down to our well-being and how we feel and how, what we're thinking about most of the time and how we're feeling about that. Because if we're constantly thinking about negative things and it's not making us feel good, we need to change our point of focus.
Absolutely. So I hope you guys like that. And remember, if you find that this information is very beneficial for you, or you know that this could be beneficial for somebody else, please share the show, because we never know who this message is going to impact. And so we are live here on Facebook. We're live here on YouTube. You guys can subscribe to the show. You can get the reminders each time we go live here on the show. And, it's always a great time to have you guys here. I want to say hello to a few people that are tuning in with us right now. We got Stephen Smith, who's joining with us. He says hello. He's watching from a broadcast from Sarasota, Florida.
Awesome.
We got Robert Shallow saying good afternoon, all.
Hey, Robert.
So welcome everybody here to the show. So today we're going to be talking about how to overcome negative thinking. We watch a lot of things. We study. I'm really big into human behavior and how we think and how to really create the life that we truly want. And we were watching an interesting interview on YouTube, and the guy that was being interviewed was Trevor Moawad, and he is a mindset coach, and he works a lot with NCAA athletes, professional athletes. And it was very interesting what they were talking about, because we've mentioned the power of our thoughts here on the show. And one thing that he was mentioning was, how to get the players to change the way they think. And he mentioned that sometimes just thinking positively doesn't always work in the instant moment.
Is it thinking positive or telling them to think positive?
A bit of both.
Okay.
Because to really change the way that we think takes time. It's a practice. It's a new behavior we all have to learn. And here's one thing that he was saying is, he says, when you say something, it's 10 times more powerful than if you just think it alone. And then negativity is 4 to 7 times more powerful than positivity. So one thing he was saying was, if I say something, obviously it's got a 10 times the power to that. But if you say something negative, now there's a 40 to 70% chance of increasing the probability of attracting or creating the thing that we just said.
Mm-hmm.
So what we're
it
talking
amplifies it more
exactly
by saying it. But also if it's negative, it's even more.
it's more, right?
But why is that? Did they talk about that?
So one thing he was mentioning, and we were discussing this of why. So it was always great to hear the statistics and what this is from research that has been done in universities. And we get that, our words, our thinking has a lot of power to that, because it gives us a vibration and an energy. And the way that we thought about it was, and I also found other articles that confirmed that that concept of negative thinking or negative words is we dwell on that more than more the positive. So if we think about this, everything is being ingrained into our subconscious mind. From day one, we are being programmed by belief systems, things we hear on TV, our parents, our peers. And the more we hear this in repetition, we are affirming that deep into our subconscious mind. And now that becomes our programming, meaning that it becomes our thoughts, it becomes our belief systems. It also becomes our behaviors. Yeah. Things we say, the things that we do, and eventually we're going to get certain results in our life.
And a lot of it, I think how we were talking about the amplifying, like the negative thoughts are stronger, I guess, than the positive. A lot of it has to do with how we feel. Because if it's like, say you're going about your day and everything's good, and then all of a sudden someone comes up to you and they start yelling at you or say mean things to you, now you start dwelling on it and you think like, well, what just happened and why did this happen? And you try to analyze the whole thing versus like, oh, well, they must be having a bad day and move on. Like most people will tend to dwell more on the negative, and that's probably why it gives it more power. Is that correct?
Yeah. And then as you say it, again, if you're dwelling on it, you're constantly thinking and putting that thought into that subconscious mind. And now that starts to create a feeling which even amplifies that even more. Yeah. At least that's how we understand it to be. And that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Because we understand that emotions is what gives something more power. Yeah. So if your thought is positive and you have these great emotions, like happy, joyful, blissful emotions, and that's going to give it power in the positive way. But if you say you even have a positive thought, but then the emotion behind it is negative, like feeling scared or fearful of doing something.
So if you have like an idea of, I want to do this, that would be really cool. You get an idea like, I want to create something. I want to go travel. I want to climb this mountain, whatever that might be.
And you say it, but then the thought is like, well, I don't have money, and then you start, but then it's thinking negative towards it, or it's a negative feeling like, oh, I'm afraid to spend money. Then it's creating more of a negative vibration towards that. But it's like, continue with the positive feeling, like forget about the how you're going to do something, just go with the good feelings of accomplishing what you want to do.
And that's why I found what was interesting, what he was saying is, if you say something out loud, it's 10 times more powerful than if you just think it alone. So we have thoughts that run through our head all the time. Yeah. And it's when we verbalize what we're thinking, when even writing things down, we've heard, or maybe you've heard that there's a higher percentage of, if you write your goals down and write it out rather than just thinking about it, the probability of you achieving that goal is much higher. And I can't remember the number, but I think it's like between 40 to 60% more of a chance. But when you write it out, it's like you're getting your thoughts out. I mean, you're sending your thought out into the world.
It's like putting out that energy. Yeah. You're saying it, you're writing it. It's getting that energy out there, like to the universe. You're saying like, this is what I want.
So then that means if we're thinking about something and then we say it, we just amplify the probability of attracting that into life by law of attraction. Because, and I was thinking about this, when we verbalize, we say something, we're gathering all of our senses into this. Yeah. We're hearing ourselves talk about it. So now that's coming back as feedback. This is what we call auto-suggestion, where we're confirming or affirming to ourselves of what we're saying. So if we're thinking about something and then we say it, or we write it down, we're giving power to that.
And we have to be mindful with how we say something or what exactly it is that we're saying, because sometimes we tend to say what we don't want out loud. Like, I don't want this to happen, and I don't want, but the mind doesn't really understand that word don't. And it's just taking whatever comes after that. So if you're saying, I don't want to lose money, it only understands lose money. And so you have to be very mindful with what you're saying. Are you focusing more on losing money? And that's what your point of focus is on. It's, if you say, I don't want this, you're focusing on whatever that is. But if you're declaring or stating exactly what you want, not what you don't want, but what you want, now you're giving energy to the things that you do truly want.
And you have to repeat those over and over. And that's what we call affirmations, is the more you say it, the more that you write it down. And so that's interesting how it's not just thinking about it all the time. That's a good start. But then also to amplify is do the positive. So the reason why we wanted to bring that statistic up about, and if you're just joining with us, that if you say something out loud, it's 10 times more powerful than if you just think it alone. And if it's something negative, negativity is 4 to 7 times more powerful than positivity. So again, now if we say something, it's 10x. But if it's something we say that's negative, something that we doubt ourselves, or something that's going on outside of us, I don't want this to happen, something in a negative form, now it's 40 to 70% of increasing the probability of possibly that thing attracting to us. So we have to be that was astonishing to me, that, wow, it's kind of showing what we've been talking about, but being very mindful of what is actually happening when we say something, when we're thinking about something. And when we can understand how things work, then that gives us the room to figure out how to correct it.
So the first thing with, like, how do you overcome negative thinking? Because it seems like most people are raised in this negative way of thinking. And if you watch the news, it's all negative. You watch all these things, it's like the media focuses more on the negative. So, one thing is, get your information that you need, but don't focus on that, all day, because especially us being at home, you tend to want to watch TV. But if you're focused on everything that's on the news, most of it is negative. So your thoughts are going to be more negative, because now it's creating a fear, it's creating a worry. And it's almost like you're hypnotizing yourself with all these negative thoughts, because all that negativity is going into your subconscious mind. So, just be mindful with what you're soaking in, everything you're watching. What is it positive? Is it negative? But most of all, how is it making you feel? And that's key, is how we're feeling. And so to overcome negative thinking is, like, first of all, stop saying negative things. It's like, what's coming out of your mouth, even though you have, there's millions of thoughts going in your mind. What's coming out of your mouth? What are you saying to people? What are you saying to yourself? And really pay attention and be mindful about that.
Yeah, that's one interesting. We were talking about in that article, or that interview we were watching, was, okay, well, if we understand that statistic about what we say is 10 times more powerful, and he's working with athletes. And so it's like, how can we make a big difference in our athletes, and what can we do today that's going to make a change? Because he mentioned affirmations are good, meditation's good, but that takes time to really build that up. So one thing that they tested was, what if we just got our athletes to stop saying stupid things? Thinking about what's on their mind, and stop saying negative things, and just focus only on that. And so what that does is they're changing a behavior. And what we've always taught is everything starts in thought first. Where did our words come from? Where did our feelings come from? Everything started as a thought. And when we fuse an emotion to that, it's amplifying that. But now, when that now starts to drive our behavior, the things that we do, the things that we say, or we don't do or don't say, that's driving our behavior. All that in the put together is what's considered our attitude. And that can determine the manifestation or the results that we're going to see in our life, or what we see unfold in front of us. So they just worked on, what if we just started changing behavior? And over time, as we start to change the things that we say, maybe normally you want to project or say something in a negative format. Well, we just not say that right now. And we practice this practice this quite a bit.
Yeah.
Being mindful of our words and how that impacts us, but also impacts other people. And when you start to do that, it definitely changes you. You become more aware.
Yeah, you become more aware, and especially if we were raised in an environment where there was a lot of negativity, or even joking around with people, there's a lot of like poking fun at people, and that's still a type of negativity towards another person, especially if you're poking fun at someone else. If you're poking fun at yourself, you know, it's still kind of negative. But if it makes you feel good, like you're, I guess, laughing and making other people laugh. But if you're poking fun at yourself, but deep down inside you feel bad, then maybe you should stop doing that.
Or if you're saying, like we talked about, if what you verbalize is giving amplification or power to something, even if you're making fun of yourself and you're laughing, it's still it's putting that you're reaffirming that into that subconscious mind.
Yeah.
And so I want to acknowledge people that have been joining with us. I have all the comments here. You can check it here. It's just not showing up on the screen here. But we have Stephen Smith that says, actually, Eric Swan says, great to see you both. Robert Shallow has actually what if question. So he says, what if I decided not to let negative thoughts in my head take control? What type of impact can I have on myself? And we're just talking about these statistics, right?
Yeah.
Then that would make a huge impact.
Yeah.
And if you just did one little thing, what if we stopped or worked on to saying something negative on a daily basis? One thing.
To say negative things?
To stop saying something, right? To catch ourselves when we say something negative. We have to be aware that it's a negative concept in the first place. And what would that look like?
Yeah.
So something negative could seem like anything that is in a doubt kind of saying, I don't think this can be done. Anything that shows that, what's the concept I'm looking for right now? I don't think it happened. Oh, that's not good enough, or I'm not good enough. Those types of things would be considered a negative saying.
Yeah.
Or something, saying something bad might happen.
There's not enough toilet paper.
There's not enough toilet paper, all in the negative, right? Yeah. And so if we just stop saying that, and this is an experiment we can all do, right? What would happen in a month from now, 2 months from now? How much different would we be a year from now? I think it would be a dramatic impact.
It's interesting because, there's all these thoughts in the ether and all these different, thoughts that are out there. And sometimes we can pick up on those things and we might feel like it's ours, but it could be somebody else's thought that's floating around. But it's like the moment you get a negative thought, automatically switch it and put in a positive thought or say something positive. And, that's something like, because sometimes I hear these thoughts. I'm like, I know that's not me. And I will automatically put a positive thought in my mind, or I'll start thinking of something positive because it's like you can pick up on certain things, but it's like, no, like I'll just switch it and then I'll start saying positive things.
Yeah.
Like in my mind, if I'm just like tuning into certain things, but it's also like what happened before that and what were you watching online or on the news, and it could affect, certain things, but switch it to something positive.
Yeah.
But like you said, just stop saying anything that's negative and see how that changes. And
eventually over time, you'll get used to that. That'll become a behavior. You'll develop a new habit because of that. We got Martine Lopez just watching. Martine. I want to say hello to Martine. Daryl Santel. He says, hey guys, I'm glad that you guys are here joining with us here on the show. We got Joshua T. Berglund that says, well, hello.
Hey, Josh.
This is a great question. He says, words have way more power than most people comprehend.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Because the things that we say to other people, and we've experienced that in our own lives, and maybe you guys have had it yourself, but I know I have, is when someone says something negative, either towards me or about something, how does that make me feel?
Yeah.
Maybe it's just when you're a kid and you just get criticized for something. And I was interested because I was reading an article earlier as well. This is from the New York Times, and this is back, I think, in 2013. And they were sharing about how we can take criticism, but maybe like one criticism at a time. And then maybe you've heard of that concept of the compliment sandwich. They're talking about in the workplace.
Yeah.
And that compliment sandwich, and we've learned this even in Toastmasters when they're giving feedback, is tell me something good, and then, or tell them something good, then state the problem or things that they can improve on, and then finish off with something good. But then they were doing the research saying that it's actually better to just get to the point of the criticism first, meaning here's where we need to change something here in your work environment, and then follow up with multiple positivity outcomes. And if we get bombarded by one critical thing, here's what you did wrong, you did this, you did this, you did this, our mind can't handle it, and then we start to internalize that, and the effect of that is so powerful. And when they were doing, I have it right here, they were doing a research in the workplace, and they were analyzing people on how their day went. And so they gave them each a journal and just describing what their day was like. And this researcher, after doing 12,000 diary entries, and this is from Professor Amabile, found that the negative effect of a setback at work on happiness was more than twice as strong as the positive effect of an event that signaled progress. So, and the power of a setback to increase frustration. So think about it. So I'm going to read that. So, and the power of a setback to increase frustration is over 3 times as strong as the power of progress to decrease frustration. So they were saying that this concept of progress really helps to motivate people. Like what's one thing to get people to be motivated is when they feel like they've accomplished something. If it's one small thing, then that boosted their morale, that boosted their productivity. But when there was even a setback, it was 3 times more powerful of creating frustration than the power of progress. And
it could be because the dwelling of it, right? Like the dwelling of the setback. And I think earlier too, we were listening to something, and it's like, okay, so like say you win $50, and then it's like, oh, that's cool. But then like say you lose $50, like what do you tend to focus on more? Like, oh man, I lost $50, and then you kind of keep talking about it. But if you win $50, like it's great, but it's like you don't really dwell on that as much as you do the losing of it. And it's interesting how human behavior is, and how we're used to just our behaviors and how we think. But a lot of it is how we were raised, and our environment, the people around us, what we focus on. It's just interesting.
Yeah. And so we're talking about how to overcome negative thinking. One of the things we just talked about was just preventing ourselves from saying negative things. It was just one thing at a time. We got to catch ourselves when we find out we're saying something. And when you're practicing this and you're being very mindful of it, once in a while, things might slip out. Now, the biggest thing is not to beat ourselves up because of that, but being able to correct ourselves. And I always find it interesting is if I find that I'm saying something negative about myself, or I dwell on something, because I'm human, I get caught up in this sometimes too. And it's like, I hear the words as they're coming out. I'm like, oh my gosh. And then once it goes out, you can't stop it. But do I dwell on that, or do I learn from that experience?
Yeah.
And I caught myself saying something. I'm going to make sure I try not to avoid saying that or do something different in the future. So I'm always analyzing myself. And that's where self-analysis is so important, is being mindful of what we're thinking, what we're saying. And sometimes you might want to write that down.
Yeah.
And it's like, here's what I'm catching myself, but do it in a positive light. If you're beating yourself on paper, you're saying something negative. Remember, you're giving more power to that.
Yeah. Also, like sometimes either my daughter or Aaron, like something will happen, and it's like, oh, I don't like this, and I don't like, and then so I'll interrupt like the thought process. I'm like, so what do you like about it? You know, what's something good about this? And ninja the conversation, or their thought pattern, and then they have to like stop and think about, well, I do like this and I like that. And because sometimes my daughter will get frustrated with the homeschool thing and, not wanting to get up to do homework. But it's like, so think about, what do you like about being at home and doing homeschool? And it's like, well, I don't have to wake up at, 5 a.m. or whatever it is. And, to do it, I get to sleep in a little longer. But there's a lot of positives to it, but it's in that moment, it's like that positivity tends to go out the window or hide, but then it's like you have to bring it back up.
Yeah.
It's like, so what do you like? What's the good in it? And you don't have to be in school for 8 hours. And it's like you get up, you do your assignments, and then you're done. And then you get to do, free time and draw or whatever you want to do.
It's really just changing our focus and seeing all the blessings that are around us. But that doesn't always work very well when someone's in a highly emotional state.
Yeah.
And when we're thinking about how negativity really affects us is when we start thinking or saying something negative, it's actually affecting us at there's an emotional level to it, but at a biochemical level.
Yeah.
So another article or video that I was watching was they were showing the research that when we are thinking something negative, it's triggering the hormone of cortisol.
Mm-hmm.
Cortisol is a hormone that's produced by our adrenal glands, which is our stress glands. Mm-hmm. So when we're in a state of fight or flight, in that fight moment, it's like that cortisol rushes up, and the purpose of cortisol is to increase blood sugar in the body. Mm-hmm. Because when you have sugar, you have a rush of energy. So I'm either going to run. That's a highly stressful state, right? It's like I'm alert. That's what cortisol does.
Yeah.
So that's what a negative thought will do, is it increases a sense of cortisol, and then we might feel bad or we might feel stressed out. But it's interesting when they said that cortisol kicks up, it actually turns off our higher cortical thinking centers.
Yeah.
And we talked about a highly emotional state. You don't think very well because it turns off all rational thinking. Mm-hmm. And so if we find ways to, again, say things a little bit differently, we can decrease the amount of cortisol that's being produced. And a high stressful cortisol state can create all kinds of symptoms and health issues in the body if released over time and for a long period of time. We need to get ourselves back to balance.
Yeah.
But when we start to think of something more positive, what's the good part about this? That's doing the complete opposite. Mm-hmm. So that is now going to increase the chemical of dopamine in the brain, which is that feel-good hormone. Mm-hmm. When we think about, oh, this is good, I feel good, it relaxes us. Now that's going to turn on the higher cortical thinking centers of rational thinking, and we can find solutions to problems. So it's something to think about.
Yeah, and when you pay attention to your behaviors, like sometimes when people are really stressed, they tend to eat more. And it's like comforting. I guess it depends on the person, but some people will want to go for like the chocolate or the ice cream, all the sweet stuff. And some of that could be chemistry too, right? Because it's something like maybe in the sugar that people crave, like that feel good, like you mentioned, like that feel good chemistry in the body or something, like it's like or something in the mind that it's like, oh, this makes me feel good, or this, I like this.
Yeah, it's like we're always looking for ways to feel better.
Yeah.
And sometimes that could be done through like that instant gratification. Mm-hmm. Some people do it through food. Some people do it through activity.
Yeah.
Some people want to exercise to make them feel better, especially if you had a stressed out day. Mm-hmm. Exercise has been known to decrease some of that so people feel good. But what happens when we stop?
Yeah.
It can come right back if we don't change what's going on in here and what's going on in here. Mm-hmm. Some people resort to medication. Some people do it destructively, where they might do it through alcohol or drugs.
Yeah.
But always finding a way to feel good. And think about that. We're always looking to feel good.
Yeah.
No one's really searching to feel bad or negative. Yeah. Like, I feel too good today. I got to find something horrible that's going on to make me feel, but again, feeling better, right?
Yeah.
We're always looking for something to make us feel good.
Yeah. So if there's something negative around you that happened, like what would be something that we can do to make us feel good without resorting to like, all the negative stuff.
Yeah.
But it's like, first, maybe go within and see, like, why am I feeling this way? Like, why do I feel bad right now? And is there anything that you can do? Like, say it's a situation, can you do anything to make that situation better? And if you can't, you just have to be okay with what is in the moment, but really go in within yourself and think about, like, I always bring up gratitude, because like we have to be grateful for what we have, for our life, a roof over our head, food on the table, and just be in that state of gratitude first.
Yeah.
Because then that will make us feel good.
Yeah. So if you guys are just tuning in, you guys are watching Awaken Your Spirit. We are your hosts. I'm Dr. Aaron Garcia.
And I'm Veronica Mendez Garcia. And today we're talking about how to overcome negative thinking.
And so negativity, negative thinking, all of this stuff really affects us. And if we understand that as we're putting this out, or by law of action versus reaction, law of attraction, we are bringing more of that into our experience because of what we're focusing on.
Yeah.
So we want to be mindful of what we're saying. And we've been talking about this.
Yeah.
But also is, what are you being inundated with on a day-to-day basis that is feeding that subconscious mind, that's feeding the behavior? Maybe it's the environment that you're in that's breeding that negative type of feeling, saying, behaviors, all of that.
Yeah.
What are you watching? What are you listening to? If you're getting all your senses involved, are we watching things like we talked about the news earlier? News is so focused on letting you know all the bad things that are happening in the world. Why do they do that? Because people just tend to want to focus on all the things that are happening, because maybe there's a sense of security that if I know what's happening, that I could be prepared for the future.
Yeah.
But it keeps people in a very worried or fear mode. That increases rating. That's why they keep doing it.
I would say it's okay to be informed and watch, get the information that you need. Okay, this is happening, but turn it off as soon as you know what's happening, and don't dwell on all that negative stuff. It's like, keep yourself positive, because the more you dwell on all that stuff, it's like, again, like I mentioned earlier, you're hypnotizing yourself with negativity, and that's something that we don't want. And I want to go to some of the comments here. We have a lot of comments coming in. Craig says, great show. Love the reminders about how your thoughts are your reality and how to change that stinking thinking. Focus your thoughts on the positive and what you want to manifest it. Awesome.
Yeah. And Stephen Smith says, I believe that our positive and negative thinking affects our genetic composition in either good or bad fashion.
Yeah.
Epigenetics, Dr. Bruce Lipton.
Yeah.
Because as we actually carry this from different generations, from not just our parents, but also our grandparents and our grandparents' parents, are their thoughts, their thinking, their behaviors and habits are all being carried down. So we are a sum total of all of the habits from even our great grandparents. And once we become aware, we can change that.
Yeah, you can break the genetic code.
Ooh, that's a new title of a book, right? Breaking the genetic code.
And Robert Shallow says, sometimes when we say something negative about ourselves out loud in front of people, it can affect the people around us, even though we said it about ourselves. That's true, because it's almost like telling them something about yourself. Like if it's negative, maybe the way they're portraying you now is negative, or it's like, oh, like, I didn't know that, like I didn't know that person was, thought about that way about themselves. So it's like, really be mindful of how we talk to ourselves.
Absolutely.
And then Robert says, I cut the grass sometimes twice when I want to release negative energy.
Yeah. But here's a concept, because I've done this, talking about cutting the grass, because I spent a lot of time outside because we got a lot of acres and wild grasses growing, so I'm weed eating. And I find that sometimes, because I get stuck in my thoughts when I'm doing that, is being mindful of it. It's all habit. What goes through your mind as you're cutting the grass, especially if you're out there for a few hours, and be mindful of what are the thoughts that are going through your head. If your constant habit is to think of all the positive things, great, keep doing that.
Yeah.
But if you dwell on all the things that are going on in the world, and because I've done this, I find myself, wow, I'm getting caught up in a certain thought process. So what I learned to do is, if I'm going to cut the grass, you're going to go work out, I listen to something very positive. I put on my iPod, and I'm listening to motivational speeches. I'm listening to talks that are educating me on these concepts about mindset, how this thing attracts us. And I find that 2-3 hours have gone by, and I feel so much better. I've learned something because I'm not getting caught up in the thinking that can just the
negative thinking.
Or it's a combination of different things, just because how the mind likes to wander. They're just thoughts.
Yeah.
But it's when they get expressed, that's when they give them more power. But we're talking about, how do we overcome negativity? How do we overcome negative thinking? Well, we have to be inundated with the opposite.
The positive. Yeah.
The positive, and do that repetitively to start changing the behavior, changing the habit.
And also when you because some people, like you mentioned earlier, when they're not in a good mood, or they're thinking negative, they want to go exercise and do all these things. But what people don't understand is, sometimes when you're in that stressful state, you can get injured, because sometimes when you're And stress could be in the form of negativity as well. Like if you're worried or fearful about certain things, or even anger could be a stress on the body because it is changing your body chemistry. But the muscles in your body can start to shut down. Certain muscles will not fire properly because of the stress that your body's going through in that moment. So if you're in a highly emotional state and you're either angry, fearful, whatever it is, just remember that you're more prone to injury because the body is not firing properly because of like all the chemistry imbalances. So just be mindful with, what you're doing in that moment. Cause sometimes that you can lift something, that you lift all the time. And then all of a sudden your shoulder goes out or things like that. And that's happened to me in the past before where I just lifted a tub of sugar and then it threw off my shoulder. And, just simple little things like that because of the stress that you're going through can affect you. So like Aaron said, put something on positive, like Robert, you cut the grass, put some earbuds on and listen to something positive and see how your mood changes and how things are different when you do that. Yeah.
Cause I see it as like chores, right?
Yeah.
If you were raised in an environment where chores were always like a negative thing, like you had to do it and you think, okay, well, there's things that need to be done. I got to cut the grass. I got to wash the dishes. We got to clean the house. And if you're upset about that or seeing, sometimes there's a mess and like, what's the mood that we're in? We're cleaning. Are you happy when you're doing it? Or are you getting frustrated because of things you have to do? And maybe I could be doing other things right now, but I got to clean this. I got to do that. It's like, we have to learn to change our behavior. And as we mentioned earlier is we're thinking something. So it's already in the process, right? But now we start to verbalize. We start to verbalize what it is that we're thinking. So if we start to say, I can't stand mowing the grass. I can't stand washing the dishes.
Yeah.
Now you are 10xing what you're thinking on the inside.
So then what happens? People start to use more dishes and then they throw them in the sink as you're washing them. And you're
we call them the never ending dishes, right? And so, but it's stuff like that too. Is like, what do we say? Because when we're saying something, we are actually going to, again, we're increasing the probability of seeing more of that or attracting more of that into our life.
It's interesting you talk about dishes. When my sister and I were younger, we were little and we would put two chairs up against the sink and one would scrub and one would rinse. And in order to make it fun, I told my sister, I go, let's pretend that we're going to be hired by someone and they're looking at us, how we wash the dishes and how fast we do it and things like that. So I said, let's just pretend that we have to do a great job in order to get hired. And then so we would, I used my imagination a lot when we were kids. I still do it now, but I would tell her that and it would make the process easier. And it's like, oh, they're watching us. Come on, let's keep focused and do the dishes. And we would get it done. And it was like, it wasn't like a chore because we were in our minds, like pretending that we were going to get hired to do something or to wash dishes.
Rather than my experience of like, I didn't do the dishes, I would get in trouble.
Yeah.
So there's a punishment that's involved with that. So does that make it an exciting thing to do? Some people might've been a positive experience because maybe they got paid an allowance.
Yeah.
You do your chores, you get paid throughout the week.
Yeah.
It's like our daughter tells us, well, I'm not going to do the dishes unless you guys pay me. It's like, and then again, what's the natural conversation that would happen?
Yeah.
And so it's like understanding also what our words would say, be very, very mindful of when we say something to somebody. Let's say if you have kids and they don't want to do something, what are the next words that come out of your mouth?
Yeah.
And how is that going to make them feel? And then how much does that motivate them or empower them to want to do something?
So with like, I'm not going to do the dishes unless you pay me, then what if we said, well, I'm not going to make dinner unless you pay me? But then now that's like kind of going back and forth. But
think about how does that make everybody feel?
Yeah. But it would be like, well, I don't ask you to pay me to cook you dinner, so it's like we're all in this together and we all have to contribute. And that's basically what it is.
Yeah.
So it's like you help, you wash your dish, I make you dinner and we all contribute because we're a family and that's what we do. It's everyone, plays a part in everything.
And so as we're talking about how to overcome negativity, overcoming negative thinking is like everything starts in thought first.
Yeah.
So one of the things you could do today, because sometimes just changing the way we think and the way we feel, that can take some time unless you have the right help to do that, unless you've been practicing it already for a while. But what was interesting, what they were saying in that article from the mindset coach, was they just focused on getting people to stop saying negative things.
Yeah.
And just practice on that, catching themselves when they want to say something. Hey, let's hold it back. They still might be thinking on the inside, but they understand that, well, if I say it now, it's going to amplify that 10 times or amplify that 4 to 7 times. Now, what's interesting, even though they said if we verbalize something, it's 10 times more powerful.
Mm-hmm.
So if just with that statistic alone, what if that verbiage that came out of our mouth was more positive?
Yeah.
Now you're 10 timesing the power amplification of that happening.
Yeah.
But as I said, something that's in the negative form is 4 to 7 times more powerful than the positive.
Mm-hmm.
So now if you say it, you're 10x in that, but if it's negative, it's 40 to 70% more powerful.
Yeah.
That we might attract that. So it's like, wow, I have to be very mindful, very, very careful about what I'm saying and what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And they found that by changing how we do things, it's changing the behavior, changing our habits is what really changes the results in our life.
Yeah.
Other people might call this our paradigms, the way we do things, our habits on a day-to-day basis. If we learn how to change those, the ripple effect of that can be astonishing.
Yeah, because like when you're having a positive conversation with people and it's making people feel good, that's the ripple effect that you're sending out, to other people. And then the more we talk about positivity and positive things that happen, it's like more people are going to want to share that as well. And it's like you hear a great story and it's like, hey, check this out. This person did this. And, and all these people, were helped or, whatever the story is. But it's sending out more ripple effects of positivity than the negative.
Yeah. So we have a question here from Stephen Smith. And he says, why do some people create drama when everything was good and then things get uncomfortable? That's a great question.
Yeah, sometimes it's because we see that there's like almost like a balance thing. So things are good, and sometimes people, I don't know, it's almost like they tend to get bored of the same thing, and it's almost like they have to create like a shift. But then the good thing about that, about the disruption, is that it allows you to understand and know what you do want. Because it's like, okay, this is happening over here, but because of that, I know what I want. And sometimes it's like you have to experience like what we call bad or not so good in order to make a decision and really focus on what we want. Like say you want a relationship and you see couples out there and you see this couple fighting and they're like name calling and saying all kinds of stuff to each other. And you see that and you're like, oh, like I want a great relationship. I want someone who's, going to respect me and we're going to, talk, great to each other. But it gives you the contrast of what you don't want, but now you can make a decision and really focus on what you do want. So sometimes like to see things like that, it helps you to know and understand what you truly want.
Yeah. And I think just from observation and experience, and this is just one aspect of it, there could be many different scenarios and reasons why, because everybody's different. When he's asking the question, why do some people want to create that drama when everything's even going good? And I've seen it in some people where it's habit. They've been conditioned to always look at things negatively. We mentioned earlier you talked about epigenetics, that we are carrying over the habits, the language, and the way we do things from not just our parents, from our grandparents or parents, great grandparents. We're carrying that over. And so if you're brought up in an environment where it's always negative, always saying something or putting somebody down, and then how does that make us feel? We're always feeling bad. And I mentioned earlier too, we're always finding a way to make ourselves feel good, even if sometimes that feeling good might not be the best for us or best for other people. But if there's like that false sense of satisfaction, I guess is how I want to say it. And so what we've seen, this is just from experience, is if somebody doesn't feel good on the inside and they're seeing somebody else being happy or maybe they're doing the things that they want to do, but they're not doing, is how are they feeling? And sometimes people can project. And you see this is how we criticize. If people are being successful, someone wants to criticize the successful person when that person may not be as successful, rather than praising and congratulating that person for doing such a great job. Again, you see that a lot because it's out of habit.
But the good thing about what Stephen just said is about why do some people create the drama? Now you know what needs to be healed. Either now, like that person is either bringing up something that they need to be healed on or work on, or it's bringing up something within you that you need to heal. Like if something that somebody else is doing is creating a disruption within your energy field and within you, maybe there's something within you that needs to be healed around whatever is going on.
Yeah.
Like, do you understand that part? So it's like, okay, this is happening now. Like everything was good, and then all of a sudden this person did this. Why does that bother you? And why is it creating so much chaotic energy within your body or your energy field? So it's like really paying attention to that as well, and ask yourself, why does this bother me? And when you keep asking yourself the question, it's like, oh, well, when I was younger, this happened, and it resembles this situation, and it still bothers me when I even think about what happened when I was a child.
Yeah.
So it's something that within yourself that it's probably showing up for a reason. Like I need to work on this because it bothers me. And sometimes we just look at things like, oh, they're just doing something to make me mad. But it's not really. Sometimes people do things because they have their own stuff that needs to be worked on.
Mm-hmm.
But then if it's affecting you also, maybe there's something within yourself that needs to be addressed or worked on.
Yeah.
So it's the thing that appears bad, but in a way it's good, because like it's bringing an awareness of how you're feeling about what somebody else is doing.
Yeah. And then you got to think, how am I taking it? How are you taking it? And are you dwelling on things that people say, things that people do? Because if it's not making you feel good, then that's a form of negativity. If we talked about this before, is some people complain that other people complain. Oh, they're complaining again, but then they're complaining about the person that's complaining, and they're doing the exact same thing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting because this has been a very big lesson for me. And I use our daughter as an example because I'm helping to raise her. If you have kids, you might understand, is if there's something that I don't like that she might be doing,
mm-hmm.
what I have discovered and found is she becomes like the mirror reflection of me. So if I see that she's left her shoes out on the floor, and that used to bother me because she used to really like do it on purpose, like hide her shoes, I think just to rile something up within me. And I would say something and I realized, wow, where does she get that behavior from?
Mm-hmm.
And I look to my left and my shoes are sitting right there on the floor.
But also seeing how you respond or how you react to that, it's like, and then she goes and hides it, and then you find it like tucked underneath a shelf or something, but she purposely did that. But it's bringing up that anger within you, but because it's something, like you said, it's something within yourself that you don't like. But then the moment you stopped reacting in that way,
never happened again.
Yeah, she stopped trying to hide it and bring it out, right?
Because I changed my perspective around it.
Change your perspective.
When you see things in a different way, it helps to change that behavior.
Yeah.
And so when I realized, wow, this is a part of me that's showing up, and I realized that if I say something if I get in a frustration way, remember,
mm-hmm.
I'm projecting now.
Yeah.
So I realized, okay, what's a better way for me to communicate this so she would understand it, but not make her feel bad at the same time.
Yeah.
So I say, hey, could you please put your shoes away? I'm going to help pick up my shoes. We're working on just clean up the house, and could you help us with that? And then
mm-hmm.
when she does it, oh, thank you very much, and you congratulate her or people on that.
Yeah.
Acknowledge people when they do a great job. That's that compliment sandwich, right?
Yeah.
And we were learning with, rather than criticizing, oh, you did this wrong, is if you're do this to ourselves first.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I did this. Maybe it didn't work out the best way. I said this, or my work wasn't as great as it could have been.
Mm-hmm.
Is, well, what can I improve on next time? Rather than, oh my God, I didn't do it right. I'm this, I'm that. The words start to go out, and when you again verbalize it, it's even stronger.
Mm-hmm.
If you're writing it out and venting it on paper, you're giving
Yeah.
amplification to that. When people talk about
mm-hmm.
on paper, venting out loud. Well, you're amplifying that. If we can change the way we perceive things and see the good in that, like you mentioned, really changes the whole energy around it.
Yeah. And something happened last week where my daughter was going through something a little sassy, and I forgot what it was, but then I think we had to clear her on some things that was bringing up a trigger for her. And then once we cleared it, then she was fine. And she was, she's like, oh, I'm sorry, Mom, for behaving that way or whatever. And I'm like, it's okay. I go, I wasn't angry with you. I go, even though, you behaved in that way, it didn't bring up anger within me and she's like, it didn't? I go, no. I go, I knew, and I understand that there was something that needed to be cleared. And then she's like, oh, and then she thought that I was going to get mad at her because of her sass, because she was being sassy. I'm like, no, I didn't get angry. I knew, and I understand that you were going through something, and you just needed to clear that. And she's like, oh, okay. And then the next day she was in a good mood, and she was completely different. And she cleaned up her room, she mopped and everything without us even saying anything.
And got her schoolwork done within like a couple hours.
Yeah.
When it would take her a few hours.
Yeah, we had left to go to the store and came back, and she was done with homework. She had cleaned her room, and I'm like, oh, that's good. She's like, are you proud of me? I go, yes, I'm very proud of you. And I said, but what I'm even more proud of is that you are in a positive mood today. And then she's like, I am? I said, yeah. I go, you seem like more loving and just, wanting to hug me and just her attitude. I go, your attitude was really positive today. And I'm really proud of you for that. And she said, oh, but she didn't really see it because I think, just doing her things and being in a good mood, it was, I don't know, like she didn't notice it, I guess, in that moment until I brought it up. And then but it really, changed her perspective of like how I was, reacting towards her is Mom angry with me? But she apologized a couple of times the day before, and I go, no, it's okay. I'm not angry with you.
Yeah, and it's interesting, like how the behavior changes almost instantly.
Yeah,
with just a change of perspective. And that's a key thing. It's a lot of times people can get upset because there's a lot of misinformation, a lot of miscommunication that happens, and we start to make things up in our own mind, and that what we make up a lot of times can go into the very negative, rather than looking at the good of all situations.
Yeah, because if I would have reacted out of anger and maybe yelled at her or for the sassiness, it would have changed the whole energy. Yeah, like everything would have changed. But it's like I didn't react that way. I just responded like, oh, we need to clear this, and once it was done, and she was like more positive. And it's just interesting how sometimes we expect people to react in a certain way, but then when they don't get the reaction that was expected, and it's like, oh, like they didn't yell at me, they didn't do anything.
Yeah, that kind of puts fire on the water on the fire.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that we help people with is when they keep getting triggered by things is removing the emotion that's behind it, the reasoning and the thought process and the behavior. And when we can change the way that we think, and we are in control of how we think, we're in control of what we say, and we're also in control of our actions. And so if we can just focus on those, we can make a big difference in our life. That's what we really have control over. Yeah. So we're talking about how to overcome negative thinking. One we were talking about is just as a habit, a practice, is to avoid saying things negative out loud. That could be a first thing that we do, and just get into the habit of being mindful. Kind of like sometimes we have to bite our tongue, even though we might be thinking or we might be feeling that is a good practice. Like, let's just start with not saying something negative, and maybe revert it to say, well, how could I say this in a more positive aspect? And start with that. That's what some of the research is saying is if you need to do something very quickly, affirmations, meditation, things really help quiet the mind. Those are all powerful too, but they were saying, that takes time. It is a skill. It is a practice. You do that, but that's the practice over time. But like, what do you do in the moment is, well, in the next few days or next month, I can work on avoiding saying things in the negative. If you catch yourself, okay, redo that for the next day and be mindful. And then what you'll start to notice is that eventually you don't say as much negative things. You'll start saying more positive things. Yeah. Second thing that we can do would be being mindful of what's going into our minds, what's going into our thoughts. So what are we watching? What are we listening to? What's being inundated into our mind on a daily basis?
Yeah, your environment. What are you creating in your environment by what you're listening to, what you're watching, and also the thoughts that you're thinking.
Yeah. And then the last thing we can do is just, really changing the conversation is how looking for the good, the positive in all situations.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where, even if things might seem challenging in your life today, is what's the lesson? Mm-hmm. What can I do to improve tomorrow or the next month, whatever that might be, is what's the blessing mm-hmm. in these? And that might be very hard in the moment because sometimes people might be dealing with a loss. Some people might be going through a challenging time in the relationship. Maybe they're hurting in their business. Mm-hmm. And that's why what we say is very powerful. So we have to be mindful of that first. But over time, we can say, okay, what's the good in this situation? Or what are the opportunities that can come from what's happening right now?
Yeah.
And it just kind of helps to change the mood a bit because, again, it's how we feel on the inside that really drives the amplification of what we track into our lives. And this takes practice, right?
Yeah. So that's why it's very important to be aware of how we feel and what we soak in as far as like what we're watching, what we're listening to. Does it make us feel good or does it make us feel bad? But also even because music is very powerful mm-hmm. and we have to pay attention to, is it, even though we like the beat of it, are the words negative or are they positive? Yeah. Because it could be almost like a subliminal message to your mind, like okay, you like the beat, but then the words behind it are negative.
Very negative sometimes.
And you're soaking that into your subconscious mind because now you have a feel-good emotion with all this negative going in. So it's going even more directly to your subconscious mind. So it's being aware of that as well.
And if things are 10 times or 4 to 7 times more powerful in negativity and you're singing the song now, think about that for a moment.
Yeah.
Because you memorize words and then you're singing mm-hmm. it. You're now like reaffirming those words into our mind.
Yeah.
And we've learned this, like when I start listening to music and actually listening to the lyrics.
Yeah.
It's amazing. Like, wow, I used to listen to this or I used to sing this. And it's like, wow, it's very, very negative.
Yeah, and we brought this to my daughter's awareness when she was younger. We listened to the radio sometimes, or she would want to turn on the radio, and there was these songs that would come on, and the beat was, like a good beat, and then she would sing, the song, and we started listening to it, and we're like, Violet, do you know what they're saying? And then this one song, it was, some of the lyrics were like, I want to stay high all the time, and then when we brought it to her awareness, she's like, oh, I thought she meant say hi. Like, I want to say hi all the time. But she was little and she didn't understand what they were even saying. And then when we started telling her, like, they're talking about this and this, she's like, oh, and then she didn't want to listen to the song anymore.
Yeah, music can definitely change the way that we feel. Mm-hmm. And so just being mindful what we're listening to, what we're watching. And that, and just change it into more positive light, and just find yourself. Sometimes it might be changing the station. Changes doesn't mean you can't listen to things. It's just once in a while, that's how we internalize that.
Yeah.
If you need to watch news, it's okay to be informed, but don't get sucked into it and don't dwell on it because again, you're feeding that information, and then how does that make us feel?
Yeah.
So that's what starts to breed a lot of that negative part of us or in people. But when we start to change our behavior and the way we think and what we say, then it also not only helps us, but you're actually going to affect a lot of people that are around you. Yeah. So that's a food for thought. You become that light for other people to want to change things within them because now you are the role model. Mm-hmm. So we hope you guys have enjoyed today's episode of Awaken Your Spirit. Remember, if you found any value in this, you find anybody else that can get a lot of value, please share the show. You can subscribe to the show if you're watching here on Facebook or on YouTube. You can subscribe, get the bell notifications to get reminded each time when we go live. And we will see you guys next time.
All right. Have a great day.
Bye, guys.